Hey everyone, it's Mark from Flight Sim School. Today we're going to have a look at the updated TBM 850 that was recently released, as well as look at the most important features of the plane so that you can decide if it's right for you if you haven't picked it up yet. Let's start with some background on the TBM though, which is a single engine high performance turboprop that can get up to speeds that'll blast by most twin engine pistons. So it's great for covering short and long distances alike, and it quickly became one of my favorites when it first released for that reason, just due to its versatility. Version 1 of the TBM was Black Square's first fully standalone plane, but since then they've also released a couple of variants of the Beechcraft Duke, and the goal of this V2 update for the TBM is to bring a lot of the enhancements from those planes back into this one. Just like with version 1 of the 850, every gauge and panel that you'll find here is a replica of a real-world component, and although there are some real-world TBMs that have G1000s, as you can see this one has more of a classic look to it, and I know that can seem intimidating for a beginner, so we'll talk about the learning curve just a little bit later in the video. This is probably a good time to point out if you have any questions about your buy decision for the TBM that I don't address in the video, feel free to pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. But while you're at it, please make sure to like the video as well, just to help me out a little bit. Now, the biggest addition in this update is the tablet, which allows you to configure everything about the plane, which you used to be able to do through the WEDAR radar menu, so this feels a whole lot more natural. And there are a few other options available, which some of them you could tweak by hand by editing some files, but they're now available here at the click of a button as well. You can also control the navigation stack that you have in the plane from here, and you can fit it with a few different combinations of the GNS 530 and the GTN 750, and you have to get those GTN 750s separately, either from TDS or PMS, depending on who you want to go with. On top of that, if you want to challenge yourself, you can take out all of the GPS systems and fly it completely analog, or even use the old style RNAV receiver, but for the most part, this is the type of plane that will usually have some sort of GPS to get your high paying customers there as efficiently as possible. Having the payload on the tablet is a big plus as well. It's one thing that was really missing from the first version because you had to use the default weight and balance screen, so this definitely adds a bit more detail and immersion. Once the plane's up and running, you can also see how the engine, the electrical, and the cabin systems are operating, which is a really nice way to visualize everything that's going on in the plane, and it's a good tool for debugging issues and learning more about how everything works. There's no way to look at Navigraph charts on the tablet though, and although it doesn't bother me too much, I feel like it's sort of become the expected standard from EFPs these days to be able to look at charts, so you'll still need to have those open separately somewhere. The only other thing that could be nice to have on the tablet is a takeoff and landing distance calculator. I know these are usually more for airliners only, but the TBM's a pretty high performance machine, and I feel like it would benefit from having one handy, especially for sneaking into and out of those smaller airfields with a fully loaded plane. In terms of complexity and how difficult it is to learn, if this is your first turboprop, there will definitely be a learning curve to the startup flow, as well as understanding how to taxi, because this plane models the beta range properly, but it's a ton of fun to learn all of that stuff, and I've already got a bunch of tutorials on the TBM 850 that can help you out with it as well. The experience that you have starting this plane feels very authentic, since you have to flip all of the right switches in the right order at the right time to not only get it to start, but to avoid damaging it as well. And this is very much a plane that will punish you for any mistake that you make, like hot starting it or over torquing it during the flight. It comes with a full range of failures that can happen randomly, but depending on how you operate it, like we were just saying, some failures can happen much faster. And again, the tablet in this V2 makes it super easy to check on this and fix any issues that you've inadvertently caused once you're back on the ground. The autopilot has all of the modes that you'd expect out of a general aviation plane, with a couple of quirks if you're mostly used to the G1000, but overall it's fairly standard, and you'll definitely want to use it during busy parts of the flight because it's very easy to end up task saturated with this airplane. Probably the coolest feature of this plane though is 850 mode, which removes the torque limiter so that you can get it all the way up to 121% torque, and that'll give you that little extra boost of power to either increase your airspeed or your climb rate, but you do have to be careful with it because it's very easy to break your engine without the limiter. In terms of hand flying, I'd say it's fairly easy to control on takeoff and climb. On the approach though, it can be a bit more challenging until you learn to manage the airspeed properly, and if you throw in a decently strong crosswind, it can be hard to keep on the center line as well. However, that last one is probably more of a skill issue on my part. This is a very versatile plane though, so you can just as well hand fly it into scenic approaches or keep your speed up and take it into a large international airport. It can really do it all, and that's one of the biggest pluses going for it, especially since it can cruise all the way up to 31,000 feet. In terms of the interior model, it comes only with the business jet interior. It looks fine for what it is, especially since you're not likely to spend much time there. There are a few other bells and whistles as well, like being able to open the doors for your customers to board the plane, as well as the engine and baggage compartments that can be opened up as well to inspect everything inside. And the newest update also includes a few more things like pitot tube covers and wheel chocks, as well as an external power card that can add a little bit of realism when you're running on ground power. You can get some pretty good wing views though from inside the cabin, and speaking of that, the latest update brought wing flex into the exterior model. It's definitely a subtle effect, but I prefer that to having it over exaggerated like you might see in some other planes. The other place where I was hoping for an improvement are the sounds. I'd say they're functional as is, but there's nothing really standout about them, especially if you compare them to the sounds in the Black Square Duke, which are some of the best sounds in any airplane in Flight Sim, so comparatively these don't really match up. This update to the TBM is absolutely free if you already own the plane. However, if you still haven't taken the plunge, it comes in at 42 USD, with the best payware comparables being the FSR M500, the SimWorks Studios PC-12, and I'll throw in the Black Square Turbine Duke as well, even though it's got 2 engines rather than 1. The Duke is probably the most complete of the bunch, which explains its price point, but I still prefer the TBM. However, you could very easily make an argument for any of them. One thing I will say though, if you already own another Black Square turbine plane, they're all very similar to each other, so at that point I would probably look more towards the M500 or the PC-12 just to add some variety. Overall though, if I was going to give the TBM 850 a rating, it would probably be a 4 out of 5. It's definitely above average, but there are still a couple of things missing to really push it into the top spots of the available GA planes for Flight Sim. If you like this review and you want to see more of them like it, please make sure to like the video and subscribe as well, and I'll see you again in the next one.